Support for this podcast and the following message come from Allianz Travel Insurance. Your flight to Florida was delayed, so you missed the cruise. Trip cancellation benefits from Allianz could help. Learn more at allianztravelinsurance.com.
Hello, hello. I'm Brittany Luce, and you're listening to It's Been a Minute from NPR, a show about what's going on in culture and why it doesn't happen by accident. Do you relate? Well, you may be lonely, but you're not alone. 1/3 of Americans report feeling lonely at least once a week. And 16% of Americans report feeling lonely all or most of the time. It's hard to say definitively if loneliness has gotten worse, but what we do know is that a significant amount of people are feeling it. And we also know that chronic loneliness is really bad for us. Studies show loneliness is associated with a higher risk for heart disease, dementia, stroke, even premature death. But who is at greater risk for loneliness? And for those of us stuck in the loneliness loop, how do we get ourselves out? I'm Brittany Luce, and for the next few weeks on It's Been a Minute, we're launching a series called All the Lonely People. We're diving deep into how loneliness shows up in our lives and how our culture shapes it. This week, we're talking about men. Outside of the general loneliness epidemic, there's also been a lot of discussion about a men's loneliness epidemic.
Study after study is showing that loneliness is on the rise and men are being hit especially hard.
It's called the male loneliness epidemic, where men tend to be more isolated than women.
And a lot of men are lonely. About 1 in 7 say they're lonely all or most of the time. We asked our listeners what that looks like, and here's what a few of them had to say.
I'm a 63-year-old lonely man. I think the loneliness is a result of a divorce of 5 years ago.
I guess I'm trying to make sense of what someone is supposed to do in their 40s. I can't help but think about the community and the sense of togetherness and unity that I experienced earlier in life. And it's left me with a great sense of loneliness.
Loneliness to me is more about the day in and day out with no one else. I try so hard to make friends. I have altered work schedules to try to make myself available, and it doesn't seem that anything really works. Going on 9 years with no friends.
That was Rick Klebanow, Jonathan Ellis, and Devin Burns. You'll hear more from them throughout the episode. But while a lot of men are lonely, some surveys suggest that they aren't actually more likely to be lonely than women are. But if that's true, then why has there been so much attention on men's loneliness? And if the problems men are having don't boil down to loneliness, what do they boil down to? I'm joined today by Ali Volpe, senior reporter at Vox.
Thanks so much.
And Harris Sokol. He's a writer and content lead at Medium.
Thanks.
To break it all down. According to Pew, there's only a 1% difference in reported loneliness between men and women. How did the narrative about a men's loneliness epidemic spread anyway?
I wrote a little bit about this, and I think the male loneliness epidemic conversation it spread because it became a conversation kind of about dating. That's how I first heard about it. And that's, I think, why this traveled so far. And I think they were conflating a conversation about singleness with a conversation about being lonely when actually they're kind of two different things.
Yeah, I think it just sort of neatly folds in with all of the headlines I've been seeing that basically just scream like, there's something going on with men. Like, men are having a problem. Fewer men are enrolling in college. Gen Z men are dating less. And perhaps most concerningly, men made up nearly 80% of the suicide rate in 2022.
Jeez.
So there's a lot of really big problems happening here. And I think all of this stuff is like very woven together under just like the big umbrella of like men are going through it. There's something happening here.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like we got all these different threads: isolation, lack of friends, perhaps less dating or increased celibacy, combined with some of these other things that you mentioned, Allie, like taking up the majority of the suicide rate, unemployment, under education. Some of those things might be correlated with each other, but they've all kind of been lumped in together with this idea that men are uniquely and especially lonely. I've also seen, though, the idea that men are uniquely lonely used to explain the rise of people like Andrew Tate and the re-election of Donald Trump. Why did loneliness get latched onto as an explanation?
Yeah, it's almost like a very easy explanation because it's solvable. If you kind of pin it on loneliness, then there's a solution embedded in that, which is like talk to them and make them less lonely. And it kind of feels like too easy of a solution to what might be just more kind of ingrained ideological differences.
Yeah. Like Harris said, it's an easy solution. And, speaking of like some of these people like Andrew Tate, like their messages of like, well, you need to have women around you only to dominate them. And like those sort of messages, I think, are very appealing for men who feel like their place in the world is being threatened. And so it's very easy to say like, oh yeah, like maybe they just need a girlfriend or a friend and like they'll be better. And I think that maps neatly onto the way that we socialize boys and men too, to sort of value that one romantic relationship. And like, that is the thing that is going to make your life better.
That's true. Some recent research has found that men expect more benefits from romantic relationships and are more motivated to seek them out compared to women.
Yeah, like because of that social messaging of like, yes, you need to find your spouse and your partner. I think it could be really, really isolating for men who don't have that.
For the last 8 years, I've been single in every way. The mind wanders to, what did I do wrong? What's wrong with me that I can't find someone that wants to be around me?
Thinking more about the data, like even if men don't self-report loneliness at a rate much higher at all than women, at the same time, I don't want to minimize that something is definitely going on. I mean, that same Pew data that we discussed earlier shows that men on a whole are less likely to reach out to people for emotional support compared to women. Other data shows that 15% of men say that they have no close friends, none. Other data suggests that the emotional quality of men's friendships are not great. They get emotional support from friends half as much as women do, and also say, I love you half as much. What is going on here? Why are men generally so bad at connection? Harris, what do you think?
Women have more one-to-one intimate relationships. Like if you think about how like physically how they're relating to their friends, with women, it's more face-to-face talking. And men, they're more kind of like doing things together side by side or like playing a game side by side. There are a few studies around like just physically how people orient to each other. I think men are socialized less to reach out to individuals and more to kind of go to a group of men, which seems harder to maintain and have.
Yeah, well, you got to build the group and then maintain the group, and then they got to be there when you need them. That's a lot.
And men are also, again, socialized to value that romantic relationship above all else. Whereas women, it's much more acceptable as girls are growing up. You value your friends. It's maybe seen as like a little feminine for boys to have a lot of friends or to seek their friends for this like emotional support and validation. Like, no, that's what you're supposed to use your romantic partner for. And then that brings up like a lot of vulnerability. If you do need that support, you might be afraid to reach out to a friend out of a fear of looking weak, out of a fear of maybe even being rejected. Your friend being like, dude, like we don't talk about that. That's strange. And so prevents people from doing it in the first place.
I also wonder, too, if it can feel safer to be in a group, because then you get more reinforcement that you are doing friendship the right way. Whereas like maybe, as we've been kind of circling in this conversation, but I guess I'll say it, maybe perhaps in a one-on-one friendship, because there is so much homophobia in our society, it can feel like, Maybe this one-on-one friendship with another man is feeling too romantic, where in a group, maybe it's more of a way to make sure like the emotional depth is like even.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Coming up, do men need to spend more time with their boys?
A friendship is a kind of living thing. Like you need to water it like a plant. Or after a while, those friendships can atrophy.
Stick around.
This message comes from NPR sponsor Sattva, maker of quality, handcrafted mattresses. Founder and CEO Ron Rutson shares one of their core values.
At Sattva, we believe sleep does unlock a superpower. When you wake up and you're totally refreshed, you go after things more. And it all starts with being on the right mattress. And that's what Sattva has been inspired by from the day that we started.
Save up to $600 through President's Day at saatva.com/NPR. This message comes from Schwab. At Schwab, how you invest is your choice, not theirs. That's why when it comes to managing your wealth, Schwab gives you more choices. You can invest and trade on your own. Plus, get advice and more comprehensive wealth solutions to help meet your unique needs. With award-winning service, low costs, and transparent advice, you can manage your wealth your way at Schwab. Visit schwab.com to learn more.
This message comes from NPR sponsor REI Co-op. You can't make more time, but when you opt outside, you can make the most of it. So make time for those early mornings, last-minute trips, and timeless views. For small victories, big fails, and everything in between. And when you're ready, REI has the gear, clothing, classes, and advice to help you make the most of your time out there. Visit your local REI Co-op or rei.com/opt-outside.
I see the media, and there's a societal point of kind of not poking fun at, but acknowledging the idea that men have a difficulty connecting with other men, or in superficial terms. I don't like sports. I don't connect in those kind of traditional ways. My girlfriend's friends, boyfriends, or husbands, there seems to be a language I don't speak with them and puts me at odds.
Something else that each of you brought up when you talked to our producer Liam in your pre-interview chats, we don't get a lot of man-to-man friendships in media, really outside of buddy comedies.
Yeah. And I think like our media is a great way where we could like show examples of what like really great friendships could look like. Like that's why Sex and the City and Girls are like so popular, because they give women an example or an archetype of different kinds of friendships. It's why people were like, like I'm a Samantha, I'm a Marnie, like it gives people like a role in which to slot themselves, or lets them know, okay, well, what I'm experiencing is normative, or, other people feel this way too. And you so rarely see that with men. Like, again, like you said, except for like buddy comedies. And in that case, they're often like doing a thing. They have like a very specific task that they're doing. And it's not so much like we're so good friends. And it's like for the female-centric friendship shows, it's about their friendships.
Yeah. Another thing from the Pew study gets at something that each of you have brought up, which is that men were just as likely to reach out to their spouse for emotional support as women were. But for every other kind of relationship, they were less likely to say that they'd reach out. You've each kind of discussed, this phenomenon of men putting more of their eggs into the relationship basket. But I wonder, what does that do to them when they do that? What do they lose out on by doing that?
I think you lose out on the richness of life. One person can't be your everything. And that puts a lot of pressure on them to sort of step up and be the everything to you. And so if that is your spouse, who already you're putting a lot on top of in terms of like domestic things, romantic things, child rearing things if you have children.
Oh my God, splitting chores.
Yeah.
Budgeting.
Yeah, like that's just so much for one person to handle. And it's just so nice when you can turn to a friend and be like, I need you because you're really strong and I need you to help me move this heavy thing. And like, I can turn to you because you know the right validating things to say. And to know a person in that way and know what their strengths are, I think is so beautiful. And vice versa. So, and you have unique things that you offer each of your friends.
I think for men, there's this idea that kind of goes unspoken where it's like, when you have a spouse, that spouse will kind of take care of a lot of the life things for you that are not making money. Like my dad, for example, rarely made social plans. My mom made all of those social plans. Like, I think your life kind of becomes very narrow. You have like work and then your spouse and your family. And there's really not much of like an outlet for more than that.
I think the loneliness is a result of a divorce of 5 years ago. I'd gotten most of my needs met from my family, but when the family broke apart, it took me a long time to realize I needed to replace those support structures.
I think men sometimes like have this idea that they need to like really focus in order to succeed, like really focus on like the few things that matter.
No distractions.
Right, exactly. Just like, let me like lock in on this thing.
That's the term. You got it. Lock in. Yeah.
Right. And then you just miss out on so much.
It just seems like you get busy in your career and kind of focus on what you have immediately in front of you. I just find having a partner becomes your friend. And it's been very difficult to have these kind of third-degree connections with people. It's left me with a great sense of loneliness and nostalgia, thinking about how things used to be versus how they are now.
And I think also when you're not sort of being in kind of regular touch with your friends outside of your relationship, those friendships can atrophy. Like a friendship is a like kind of living thing. Like you need to water it like a plant.
Yeah, it makes me think of that term low maintenance friendship. Have you guys heard of that?
I've heard about this, yes.
And I hate it. I hate it because friendships are work inherently. Like, and I don't mean like drudgery, but it just takes effort. Yeah, it takes effort. And like it's joyful effort. It is like to show up for somebody like when they're having a bad day, or even just like watching a terrible show with your friend. Like it doesn't feel like effort, but you're putting in effort. And that's what it takes to maintain a friendship.
Connected to this idea, I mean, I think there's a lot of women out there that feel the weight of being relied upon in that way. I mean, I feel very fortunate. I adore my husband. One of the things that I really loved about him and that I was very intent on looking for when I was like looking for a partner was that he had friends, had good friendships, and was a good friend. He's always making new friends, having plans, got different groups of people that he has dinner with, wine country trips, wine tastings, okay, reality TV watch parties, all types of things. I have, though, been in relationships where I felt like, oh my gosh, like, is there anybody else that you could talk to? Is there anybody else in your life? And it's a lot to carry. And I think a lot of women saw this narrative about male loneliness and they were like, oh, please do not make this my problem. But clearly a significant number of men are finding it hard to make friends or reach out to people for connection when they're lonely. So what needs to change?
I think that more opportunities to be in a group of other men in a structured way. And I don't know exactly what that looks like, but, you know, adult sports leagues, for example, more like missions and quests for men to do.
What I've heard from researchers when like talking about like friendlessness and loneliness more broadly is like, we need better examples. Like, again, to go back to media, like there needs to be just like better examples of like healthy male friendship. And even like within a person's life, like if you are a father to a young boy, like you have a great opportunity to like be a really good example and like show your kid yeah, it's totally fine for me to have like my male best friend come over and we're going to like talk about stuff. Yeah, we just need to show the boys in our lives like what good relationships look like, that it's not about dominating another person. It's not about being strong or not having emotions. It's about like we're all here lifting each other up. Like I got your back, you got my back, and like there's nothing weird or shameful about that.
Oh my gosh. Well, Harris, Allie, thank you both so much. This was really great.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. This is great.
That was Allie Volpe, senior reporter at Vox, and Harris Sokol, writer and content lead at Medium. If you or someone you know may be considering suicide or is in crisis, call or text 988 to reach the Suicide in Crisis Lifeline. This episode of It's Been a Minute was produced by
Liam McBain.
This episode was edited by
Jasmine Romero.
Our executive producer is
Verilyn Williams.
Our VP of programming is
Yolanda Sanguini.
All right, that's all for this episode of It's Been a Minute from NPR. I'm Brittany Luce. Talk soon.
This message comes from Homes.com. You don't just live in your home, you live in your neighborhood as well. So when you're shopping for a home, you want to know as much about the area around it as possible. Luckily, Homes.com has got you covered. Each listing features a comprehensive neighborhood guide from local experts. Everything you'd ever want to know about a neighborhood, including the number of homes for sale, local amenities, and even things like median lot size and a noise score. Homes.com. We've done your homework. This message comes from Mint Mobile. Mint Mobile took what's wrong with wireless and made it right. They offer premium wireless plans for less, and all plans include high-speed data, unlimited talk and text, and nationwide coverage. See for yourself at mintmobile.com/switch. This message comes from Ameriprise Financial, proud sponsor of public media. For over 130 years, clients have relied on the strength and stability of Ameriprise to help them feel more financially confident. Learn more at ameriprise.com/advice. Member FINRA and SIPC.